Have you ever felt, deep in your heart, that something is trying to get your attention through signs that cannot be explained in words? There are signs that sound like trumpets, but only those who hear understand. Imagine for a moment that there is a hidden language made of symbols, warnings, and small omens. A language of the Virgin that arrives in fragments, as if the whole world were whispering warnings that only a few can translate. What you're about to discover now may surprise you. We're about to decipher the hidden trumpets, the 7 unrevealed messages of Medjugorje, and understand why these signs have left so many people in expectant silence. Throughout history, prophecies and signs have always provoked fear and hope at the same time. And when we talk about the messages of Medjugorje, this tension grows. It's not about mystery for the sake of mystery. It's about a voice that insists on awakening consciences, about warnings from Mary that appear disguised as events, dreams, and changes in people's hearts. Have you ever experienced something like this? Perhaps you felt a chill down your spine upon seeing a coincidence that seemed too much to be coincidental, or heard a piece of advice that came to mind at just the right time. Stay with me until the end, because every detail we reveal can transform the way you observe the signs around you. In this video, we'll explore the metaphor of trumpets, not literal trumpets, but symbols that resonate like urgent calls. When the Virgin uses images and visions, the message can come shrouded in mystery, signs in nature, warnings about wavering faith, insistent calls to prayer and fasting, and promises of light for those who remain faithful. These hidden trumpets don't shout, they resonate deeply. And that's precisely why many miss them without realizing it. By understanding this language of the Virgin, you begin to decode everyday events as clues. And the third message, which we'll address slowly, has the power to change everything for those who recognize it. We are not here to sow panic or offer easy answers. Our purpose is different: to inform clearly, create connection, and awaken an attentive and prudent perspective. The unrevealed messages of Medjugorje carry both a warning and an invitation to inner conversion, to protect the family, to strengthen faith, and to observe with discernment the signs appearing in the world. Some people interpret these signs as omens of global events, others as intimate invitations to personal change. Both interpretations deserve respect, which is why we will walk with a balance between curiosity and authority. As I guide you through these first images and sounds, trumpets that seem to come from somewhere between the visible and the invisible, think about the little things that have awakened you in recent months: a conversation, a dream, an inexplicable shiver. You may have already received one of these messages and not even realized it. What's fascinating about Mary's prophecies and warnings is precisely this subtlety. The language is delicate, but the effect is profound. If you want to learn to listen, to be vigilant, and to respond wisely, this video is for you. Stay with me. In the next sections, we'll unravel the 7 messages one by one, understanding how they arrive, what signs to look for, and what you can do today to prepare spiritually. The third trumpet, I warn you now, is unlike anything you imagine. Just wait until we hear it. If this topic resonates with you, leave a comment below with what touched you most or what sign you've noticed in your life. Your story matters and can help someone else pay more attention to the signs around them. When you share an experience, a question, or even a fear, we're creating a community that watches together and learns together. Your participation here is what makes this channel grow and reach more people with this type of content. And that's how such delicate and important messages reach those who need it most. If you feel this video brought clarity or awakened something in your heart, leave a like. This isn't vanity, it's a practical way to make the message reach more people who are also seeking answers. And if you want to follow closely our journey to decipher the 7 unrevealed messages of Medjugorje, subscribe to the channel. That way I can bring more thoughtful content with testimonies, analysis, and practical steps for those who truly want to prepare. Just between us, every comment, every like, and every subscription helps keep this space alive and bring more voices, more research, and more light to the conversation. Now, without leaving here, Take a deep breath and prepare yourself. The first trumpet is about to be revealed, and what it brings may change the way you perceive the world around you. Now I want to delve even deeper into this subject. Imagine the image of an entire city being awakened by a sound no one notices at first. It's not a blaring siren or an alarm invading the streets. It's a low note, a whispering trumpet that slips through the cracks in routines and strikes the right chord in the hearts of those who are attentive. It is this metaphor, hidden trumpets, that helps us understand how the Virgin's language reaches us, encoded in symbols, in small signs, in coincidences that carry an unusual weight. This is not empty mysticism. It is a communication that manifests itself through subtle clues, a sequence of dreams, a strong intuition before a decision, an unexpected encounter that changes someone's trajectory. And when we put these fragments together, a pattern emerges. This pattern has an impact. It guides decisions, alters mindsets, transforms routines, and for many, inaugurates a true journey of conversion and inner transformation. When we talk about symbols, we're not just looking at classic religious images. A symbol can be a repeated gesture, a phrase that comes to mind at crucial moments, a series of events that, considered in isolation, seem trivial, but which, when seen together, form a language. Imagine a hill at dawn, a person praying as the gentle wind moves the leaves, someone who, days later, reports a vision that coincides with small weather changes and news that moves an entire community. For those with eyes to see, these elements are like notes in a musical score. The trumpet plays, but instead of making noise, it insinuates, it guides. This is the beauty and difficulty of Medjugorje's unrevealed messages. They are intricate, layered, and require discernment to separate the sincere from the fruit of fear or hasty interpretation. Discerning is, after all, a practical decision. It's not just about accepting or rejecting. It's about questioning, researching, confronting tradition, prayer, and a deep sense of humility. It's also about analyzing the context. Who received the sign, what the consequences were, what the testimony is of the transformations that came afterward. Hidden truth, when revealed gradually, demands responsibility. That's why messages often come in the form of a warning, not to cause panic, but to instigate a review of priorities, a change of mindset that puts faith first and human decisions second. There's an implicit invitation in each trumpet: adjust, course, care for family, strengthen one's inner life. And this invitation, when heeded, generates a ripple effect. The impact reaches relationships, communities, and even larger structures of collective conviction. There's also a practical aspect that few people highlight. The hidden trumpets function as a behind-the-scenes moment of transformation. They don't arrive as a ready-made script, but as loose pieces of a scene that needs to be assembled. That's why many experience the messages as processes, not as one-off events. The journey of someone who identifies with a message can include renewed nights of prayer, life-changing decisions, small but constant sacrifices, and a growing interest in studies, testimonies, and even the history behind the apparitions. This internal movement is often reflected externally. Priorities shift, the way we speak to others softens, and our perspective on the world gains new clarity. This is the kind of transformation that doesn't appear in the spotlight, but exerts lasting power. At the same time, it is essential not to romanticize experiences or jump to spectacular conclusions. Hidden truth requires method, listening, comparing, asking reputable sources, praying for discernment, and above all, remaining attentive to the fruit of the messages: peace, sincere repentance, renewed charity. The Virgin, in the language we use here, does not only point to the future in catastrophic terms. She often directs us to simple human actions: forgiving, caring for the little ones, strengthening children's faith, teaching prayer at home. This balance between warning and promise is crucial to avoiding alarmist interpretations that generate anxiety rather than encouragement for wise and practical decisions. And speaking of decisions, don't underestimate the power of everyday choices. A decision made with serenity and faith has more impact than a public display of fervor that doesn't bring about sustainable change. The mindset these messages seek to inspire is one of vigilance and responsibility, an attitude of understanding that every gesture matters, that conversion is an ongoing process, and that true preparation lies not in panic, but in regular practices of prayer, fasting, family care, and charitable action. This is what transforms mystery into mission, a sign into a path, and a warning into commitment. There's also something deeply human in the reactions to the trumpets: fear, hope, curiosity, skepticism. All of these responses are legitimate and part of the collective process of understanding. What we propose here is to walk with intellectual humility and an open heart, knowing that revelations can lie behind the scenes of life, in chance encounters, in meaningful coincidences, in decisions that call us to change. If you felt something similar, if some coincidence or dream has impacted your life, know that this can be a starting point for discovering a greater meaning, a truth that is gradually being revealed. Now I want to delve even deeper into this topic, exploring how these trumpets manifest in concrete images and what practical signs you can begin to observe in your daily life, without fear and with mature discernment. Comment below. I'm on this journey too. Now I want to delve even deeper into this subject. Let's begin by understanding the setting where it all began. Medjugorje is a simple village nestled among hills that has acquired a meaning that transcends borders and languages. It is a place where thousands of people claim to have heard something that doesn't fit in the headlines, a subtle language, full of symbols and invitations to transformation. In June 1981, 6 young people from the community reported receiving apparitions of the Virgin Mary. The news spread quickly, first throughout the region, then around the world. And soon Medjugorje ceased to be just a place on the map and became a constant stage for stories, questions, and life changes. Since then, pilgrims have come seeking answers, families have found healing, and many conversion stories begin right there, the fruit of encounters that, for some, were mere coincidences and, for others, profound revelations. This brief timeline is not intended to exhaust the story. It serves to provide context, so we can see how the unrevealed messages are rooted in real events, testimonies, and decisions that change trajectories. It's important to recognize that, from the beginning, Medjugorje has brought with it controversy and fascination. The phenomenon has divided opinions. Some see the apparitions as an authentic calling, capable of generating lasting spiritual fruits. People who have changed priorities, adopted new prayer practices, and reshaped their family relationships. And others insist on skepticism, urging caution and rigorous investigation. This tension between faith and criticism is, in fact, part of the discernment process itself. The messages we call hidden trumpets challenge both the comfort mentality and the immediate impulse to sensationalize. Therefore, scholars, theologians, and members of religious institutions have followed the reports, examined testimonies, and sought signs of real impact, sincere conversions, ethical and behavioral changes, and fruits of charity visible in the daily lives of the communities receiving these messages. When we speak of testimonies, we are talking about concrete stories, accounts of people who found peace after years of unrest, families who resumed prayer at home, and young people who changed key decisions motivated by an intuition or a vision that, for them, was transformative. The human dimension of these accounts gives substance to the apparitions. It is not just a set of words or symbols, but actions and consequences that unfold behind the scenes of life. And this is precisely where the metaphor of the trumpets gains strength. A trumpet sounding behind the scenes causes silent effects, which accumulate and end up altering routines, relationships, and important decisions. The journey of those touched by these messages usually involves stages: doubt, seeking, prayer, change, and it is along this path that the true impact is seen. Small transformations that, combined, generate a new configuration of meaning in people's lives. It's also worth noting that historically, apparitions and prophecies have always required a balanced perspective. History offers us varied examples, from movements that revealed fruits of spiritual renewal to experiences that called for greater discretion and regulation. Therefore, the approach we propose here is neither episcopal nor militant. It is investigative and pastoral at the same time. In presenting the context of Medjugorje, we seek to situate the narrative in human evidence and verifiable accounts, without resorting to conspiracy theories or hasty judgments. There is a body of studies, interviews, and analyses that seek to understand the causes and effects of these apparitions. Academics and pastors who study everything from the psychology of testimony to the socio-cultural impact on the communities involved, and this body of work helps separate the spectacle from authentic transformation. The relevance of these observations is practical. When we understand where messages come from and how they are articulated over time, we can also better assess how to react to a signal that touches us. Instead of impulsive responses, comes the possibility of thoughtful decisions, aligned with a mindset of care and responsibility. Transformation in this context is not synonymous with drama. It is a daily process, made up of small choices: praying more, forgiving, educating children by example, prioritizing the hidden truth that emerges in simple actions. This type of change has a lasting impact because it alters structures of coexistence and, consequently, reveals fruits that help validate the authenticity of a signal. On the other hand, the controversy reminds us of something essential. Not every apparition report is automatically a sign of something universal. There is always a need to compare, verify, and observe the fruits. Prudence is a virtue here. Still, the narrative power of Medjugorje lies precisely in this blend of the everyday and the sacred. Ordinary people recounting extraordinary experiences, acts of faith that resonate in concrete gestures of love and service. This intertwining of the human and the spiritual is what makes the messages so compelling and, at the same time, so demanding. They call us to reevaluate decisions, to embrace inner transformations, and to look at life with a new mindset. Furthermore, there is a community element that cannot be underestimated. The apparitions have created networks of support, testimony, and study that spread throughout the world. People who share prayer methods, fasting experiences, stories of healing, and practical steps to protect their families and educate children in the faith. These networks act as a kind of backstage where the messages are decoded and applied. Conversations, small groups, studies, and testimonies that help transform the revelation into concrete practice. It is this social fabric that often confirms the real impact of the messages. When the transformation affects not only the individual, but the community, the sign ceases to be merely an isolated experience and becomes part of a collective journey. Now, I want to go even deeper into this subject. Comment: this makes sense to me. Now I want to delve even deeper into this subject. When we talk about how messages reach us, we enter a territory that blends the personal and the collective, the visible and the behind-the-scenes of faith. The apparitions, as reported in Medjugorje, involve visionaries, ordinary people with ordinary stories, who suddenly find themselves at the epicenter of something extraordinary. These visionaries receive images, phrases, sensations, and sometimes simple instructions that need to be translated, interpreted, and lived before they can be understood in their full depth. The experience is often fragmentary, a sign here, a phrase there, a dream that appears in the early hours of the morning, loose pieces that, with time and prayer, begin to form a larger meaning. The condition of being unrevealed means precisely this. Many parts remain locked away or left to other moments, like pieces of a puzzle distributed throughout the journey. Sometimes there are elements that the seers themselves cannot explain. Other times, parts of the messages are intentionally hidden, perhaps out of prudence or because the full revelation will only make sense in a larger context. This dynamic creates an aura of mystery and simultaneously demands responsibility. It is not mystery for the sake of mystery. It is a method that preserves the hidden truth until the community is ready to apply it wisely. Thus, observers must learn to distinguish between sensationalist curiosity and an honest search for meaning. The signs that accompany apparitions can manifest in varied and often unexpected ways. There are reports of visual phenomena, lights that move unusually, clouds that seem to form images, a glow that falls on a person or place. But there are also more discrete manifestations, a phrase that comes back repeatedly in the memories of several residents, a dream synchronized with a public event, a series of coincidences that, taken together, point in a direction. Sometimes what seemed trivial gains weight when compared with other accounts. A tree that blooms out of season at the same time as a conversion, a healing that occurs after a night of intercession, or even family decisions made after a sign, felt as a calling. These small notes make up a score that, for those who learn to listen to it, functions as a language. Interpretation is not, however, a neutral act. The mindset of the observer influences the meaning given to the signs. Someone already immersed in a spiritual journey will tend to read the fragments as an invitation to transformation. Another, more skeptical, will see them as mere coincidences. Therefore, discernment must be practical. It involves prayer, responsible reading, consultation with reliable sources, and observation of the fruits the message produces. Fruits are indicators: inner peace, lasting conversion, growing charity, real reconciliations. When the hidden truth begins to produce a positive impact on people's lives and the community, it gains credibility. The decisions that arise from this process, renunciations, reorientations, changed priorities, are as important as the revelation itself. The idea that parts of messages remain intentionally hidden may seem harsh, but there are sensible reasons. Gradual revelations protect the community from hasty interpretations that could generate fear or rash actions. Saving segments until the context is clearer allows guidance to be applied with balance. Think of a mentor who delivers teaching step by step, respecting the learner's development time, or a doctor explaining a diagnosis cautiously to avoid panic. This veiled pedagogy aims for real transformation, not spectacle. When the hidden truth is revealed progressively, it has a better chance of generating mindset changes and sustainable decisions over time. There is also a human chain that translates and protects these messages. It's not an automatic process. It involves priests, community leaders, scholars, spiritual guides, and even psychologists, who, through dialogue, help separate what is personal from what can have community application. These behind-the-scenes activities, prayer groups, studies, and testimony gatherings, serve as filters that prevent sensationalist interpretations and promote a practical application of the revelations. Behind the scenes, the message is tested, weighed and confronted with tradition and an ethical sense that honors both novelty and responsibility. It is in this discrete work that concrete practices often emerge: renewed prayer routines, reformulated family priorities, and charitable programs that respond to the perceived impact. At the same time, we need to be honest about human limitations. Ego, the desire for prominence, fear, and anxiety can distort accounts. Therefore, prudence is a necessary virtue. Not every testimony means that every fragment has universal validity. Some experiences remain local, others reveal a calling that, over time, proves fruitful or not. The test of time and fruit is the most reliable instrument for evaluating into apparition. When the transformation is consistent, when people's mindset shifts toward the greater common good, then we see that something genuine was present. On a practical level, learning to hear these hidden trumpets requires small actions: paying attention to routine, being careful with decisions, being open to changing habits that no longer generate life, and being willing to invest in your personal and family spiritual journey. It's not about living in search of signs, but about cultivating a vigilant heart that recognizes when the ordinary becomes tinged with the extraordinary. Revelations, when well interpreted, alter the impact of daily choices. They make a decision to forgive more likely, an attitude of service more natural, a family priority clearer. This is the transformative power that the Virgin's language seeks to unleash. Now I want to go even deeper into this subject. Comment: this makes sense to me. Now I want to delve even deeper into this subject. When we speak of the first trumpet, the call to inner conversion, we are not dealing with an abstract idea or an empty moral appeal. It is a concrete invitation to a transformation of the heart that, when accepted, alters decisions, routines, and even our mindset toward life. Imagine a person who has lived for years putting off small decisions, postponing forgiveness, leaving prayer on autopilot, becoming a prisoner of habits that drain energy and hope. One day this person wakes up with a different feeling, a tightness in the chest that cannot be explained by news or external events. It is an inner discomfort that functions like a red light, a gentle warning that calls for reconsideration. This sensation is often the first blast of the trumpet, an intimate call to reevaluate priorities, to choose what truly generates life and not just momentary comfort. Inner conversion is not a dramatic or instantaneous gesture. It's a practical process that takes place in small, repeated acts. A decision to forgive instead of reacting. A daily renunciation that makes room for good. A shift in mindset that values the essential over the superfluous. And this process has a real impact. It transforms relationships, reshapes families, and, over time, reveals fruits that help validate the authenticity of the calling. To better understand its worth, listening to a short but revealing story. I met someone who, during a period of anguish, began setting aside 3 minutes a day for absolute silence. No cell phone, no distractions, just silence and a brief prayer. In a short time, this simple practice created an inner clarity that previously seemed impossible. Decisions that seemed difficult were made calmly. Family conflicts that had dragged on for years found space for reconciliation, and a new life priority emerged. It wasn't a spectacle. It was a discreet and ongoing transformation, the fruit of discipline and openness to what I call the hidden truth, that voice that operates behind the scenes and only reveals its full meaning when we are consistent in our daily choices. Therefore, the practice I recommend is practical and accessible. 3 minutes of intentional silence every day. 3 minutes may seem short, but they are enough to create a point of contact with one's own heart, to hear the trumpet and whisper. Mode, to allow light to begin to shine on decisions that were previously made on autopilot. Inner conversion also requires courage to face painful aspects of one's life. Acknowledge mistakes, ask for forgiveness, make restitution when possible, and accept small sacrifices that liberate. This courage isn't spectacular heroism. It's the courage of routine choices that together make up a journey of transformation. The mindset that accompanies this process exchanges haste for attention, pride for humility, reaction for reflection. When the messages of Medjugorje and other spiritual manifestations point to inner conversion, they are signaling a path of healing that involves concrete decisions and a real impact on people's daily lives. It's not just emotion, it's fruit. And fruit is measured by the change in behavior that persists over time, the patience that emerges in relationships, the compassion that manifests in actions, the priority given to prayer and family care. It's also important to emphasize that inner conversion has a communal effect. When someone changes their mindset, it reverberates within their inner circle. Children who see parents praying more frequently, couples who resume sincere conversations, neighbors who notice acts of kindness that were previously absent. The impact translates into small reorganizations of practical life, meal times that once again become opportunities for gathering, moments of shared silence, spending and time priorities that align with deeper values. In other words, personal transformation doesn't remain private. It reaches the backstage of community life and, therefore, is valuable both for those seeking individual growth and for those concerned with the spiritual health of their family and community. At the same time, inner conversion should not be confused with superficial moralism. It's not about following a list of rules, but about choosing a life direction consistent with a higher purpose. It's a shift in mindset that makes it natural to opt for actions that generate lasting well-being. Forgiving, instead of holding grudges, prioritizing quality time over fruitless consumption, practicing mercy instead of judgment. These decisions, when made repeatedly, become habits that reinforce the transformation and demonstrate the sincerity of the call. The hidden truth that the trumpets announce often works this way, silently, through simple practices that become pillars of a renewed life. It's also essential to understand that inner conversion requires discernment and balance. It's not an invitation to self-punishment or an impulsive fervor that quickly dissipates. On the contrary, the proposal is a gradual renewal, sustained by prayer, reflection, and community support. Seeking guidance, sharing doubts, studying testimonies, and listening to mature voices are all part of a responsible journey. The conversion process is strengthened when articulated in concrete practices, such as the 3 daily minutes of silence, and when supported by a community that welcomes, lovingly corrects, and encourages continued progress. There's also a practical aspect worth highlighting. Inner conversion makes people more sensitive to other signs, to other trumpets that may come later. When the heart is aligned, perception sharpens. Signs in nature, sudden intuitions, and chance encounters gain prominence and can be interpreted with greater discernment. This does not mean living in anxious anticipation, but cultivating attentive listening that guides wise decisions. The journey of conversion is, therefore, both interior and practical, and this dual dimension is what gives strength to the initial call. Now I want to delve even deeper into this topic, exploring how this conversion practice can be structured into daily life and what practical signs indicate that change is truly occurring. Comment below. I'm on this journey too. Now I want to delve even deeper into this subject. When the second trumpet sounds, it doesn't come as a thunderclap that knocks everything around. It arrives as a subtle warning about the wavering faith that slowly corrodes the interior of people and institutions. Imagine a church where the seats remain empty, programs continue out of inertia, and rituals have lost the warmth of encounter with the sacred. This isn't just statistics or appearance. It's a symptom of a mentality that prioritizes comfort over conviction, routine over transformation. The message here isn't accusatory, it's a call for lucidity. When faith cools, decisions that were once made from a deep sense of purpose become guided by convenience, fears, and momentary interests. And this cooling has a real impact on families, leaders, and the very capacity of communities to generate hope. Spiritual leaders and scholars who follow phenomena of religious renewal do not underestimate this signal. There is a practical urgency in their warnings. Without spiritual vigor and solid formation, institutions become vulnerable to fragmentation, empty rhetoric, and reactive responses to crises rather than responses rooted in conviction. This is not a distant theory. It is something we see in everyday life. Ministers who lose enthusiasm, social programs that remain superficial, young people who cannot find a living language for their faith. Therefore, when the messages of Medjugorje speak of a warning to wavering faith, they are pointing both to the individual and to structures that need to recover a mentality of encounter, service, and authenticity. The impact is not only spiritual, it is social, emotional, and even decision-making. Public and private decisions arise from an inner matrix, and when this matrix loses consistency, the consequences appear in all spheres of life. But how can we recognize this spiritual coldness without falling into pessimism or destructive criticism? The first step is sensitivity. Sensitivity to perceive that something has changed. Perhaps prayer is done out of habit, lifeless. Perhaps generosity is measured more by image than compassion. Perhaps family dialogue has lost depth. These signs, minor at first glance when accumulated, indicate a shift in horizons. And recognizing is not condemning. It is opening space for transformative decisions. The hidden truth the trumpets announce here is that the wisest response to this loss of fervor is not spectacle, but simple repeated acts that rebuild a life of faith with practicality and honesty. Small acts of faith, applied consistently, have the power to restore steadfastness. I'm not talking about grand gestures, but daily choices that reshape our mindset. For example, choosing to start the day with a short, intentional read that guides the heart, deciding to turn off your cell phone for half an hour to truly talk with those who live in the same house, or resuming a habit of gratitude at the end of the day, silently listing 3 things that gave meaning to the hours. These gestures are like gentle medicine that, taken with discipline, generate spiritual immunity. They reorient decisions because when the head and heart are trained to focus on the essential, everyday choices change. Consumption ceases to be an escape, pride loses ground, and caring for others becomes a priority again. Another practice that community leaders have highlighted as effective is shared formation. Bringing together small study networks, prayer meetings, or service groups creates an environment where faith is nourished, tested, and strengthened. It's not just information, it's coexistence that generates testimony. When someone sees another acting coherently, when they witness small sacrifices that bear real fruit, the collective mindset transforms. The journey of faith recovery often gains speed when this community fabric exists. The behind-the-scenes space where experiences are shared, difficult questions are asked, and correction is received with kindness. And in this process, the figure of the leader matters. Leaders who don't seek the spotlight but who cultivate authenticity, inspire trust, and help translate revelations into concrete practices. The warning about wavering faith also touches on a psychological dimension. The feeling of loss of meaning can be mixed with anxiety, discouragement, and confusion. In these cases, impulsive decisions are tempting, both in personal choices and in community reactions. The conversion we spoke of earlier is complemented here by more careful inner work, seeking spiritual counsel, talking to mature people, allowing a process of reconstruction that doesn't depend on easy formulas. Psychologists and pastors who accompany communities agree on one basic thing: healing and steadfastness don't come from slogans, but from processes that allow time, admit fragility, and practice the discipline of daily love. This is the difference between a faith that endures and one that dissolves at the first adversity. It's also crucial to distinguish between legitimate criticism of institutions and widespread discouragement. Some institutions truly need reform. Others simply suffer from the same human limitations that all structures have. The hidden trumpets call us to discern, not to demolish. Discerning means looking at the impact. Do the initiatives produced generate hope, reconciliation, and concrete service? Or are they merely appearances? This analysis is practical and requires the courage to make difficult decisions when necessary, realigning priorities, dedicating time to training, investing in projects that protect children and strengthen homes. Ultimately, the decisions that restore faith are well-considered decisions of love. There are stories that perfectly illustrate this path. Communities that went through periods of spiritual coldness, and by adopting routines of intense prayer, family gatherings, and local service projects saw hope reborn. It wasn't something spectacular overnight. It involved daily discipline, small measures, and leaders willing to walk with the people, even when in doubt. The impact was visible. More life in celebrations, more young people involved in service and healing personal relationships. These stories show that the trumpet of warning is not inevitable. It is an invitation to recovery. The transformation it requires is slow but effective and changes mindsets from the inside out. Now I want to delve even deeper into this topic. I want to explore what practical signs you can observe in your own life, and what small decisions can begin to reverse spiritual coldness, transforming routine into service, indifference into care, and silence into active prayer. Comment below. This resonates with me. Now I want to delve even deeper into this subject. When we speak of the third trumpet, we are faced with what many describe as the core of the Virgin's language, a signal that is not restricted to the intimacy of a single person, but that vibrates in the public sphere and draws collective attention. It is a trumpet that, by its nature, pulls back the curtains and exposes something that demands a response not only internally, but in the public square of ordinary life, in the decisions of leaders, in the reactions of communities, in the headlines that echo for days. Some interpret this signal as a warning with potential global repercussions. Others read it as an amplified, intimate call, a personal summons that, because of its intensity, ends up reverberating socially. This ambiguity is precisely what makes the trumpet so powerful. It summons both the individual and the community, inner transformation and collective adjustment. Imagine for a moment a series of small signals that begin to align unexpectedly. Reports of dreams with similar themes in different regions, public decisions made suddenly and laden with ethical consequences, social movements born with a tone of repentance and service, natural phenomena that accompany a sequence of remarkable human events. When these elements intertwine, a few attentive eyes perceive a pattern. not just noise but composition. This is when the central trumpet sounds. It doesn't shout prophecy from a loudspeaker but creates meaningful coincidences that trigger curiosity, controlled fear, and, if the mindset is prepared, a coherent and responsible response. For those who want to learn to read this type of sign, it's essential to understand the difference between sensationalism and careful reading. The trumpet doesn't call for panic, it calls for discernment. Practical signs that may indicate its presence include a multitude of independent testimonies pointing to the same theme, sudden shifts in the priorities of institutions that previously maintained stable routines, an increase in conversions, or public repentances that are articulated with concrete acts of charity, and even signs in nature that, when cross-referenced with human accounts, form a compelling narrative. These clues taken in isolation can be explained by chance, but when they accumulate and bear fruit, reconciliations, changes in decisions, protection of families, increased practices of prayer and service, the interpretation gains consistency. There's a component of responsibility to this entire process. Interpreting a trumpet requires not only sensitivity, but also prudence and behind-the-scenes knowledge. Leaders, theologians, and even scholars of religious psychology monitor these phenomena precisely to help separate what's grounded from what's a passing fad. They observe the impact, not just the emotion of the moment. The hidden truth that begins to reveal itself through this trumpet must produce something measurable in the realm of the common good, more than words or actions, more than sensations, decisions that benefit families and communities. It's this impact that gives the signal credibility. The emotional effect of this trumpet is ambivalent. It can provoke fear because it reveals collective fragilities. It can also generate hope because it points to paths of reparation and conversion. The mindset that reacts with balance to this kind of warning is one that doesn't allow itself to be swept away by either alarmism or apathy. It's a mindset that combines humility and responsibility. The humility to admit limits and recognize signs, the responsibility to make thoughtful decisions that promote life. In practical terms, when we perceive signs of this trumpet, what is expected of us is not a spectacle, but two simple and powerful attitudes, strengthening our inner life so that our response is guided by discernment and acting locally where it can bear fruit, protecting our families, supporting charitable initiatives, caring for the most vulnerable. There are historical and contemporary examples where collective signals have brought about real change. Conversion movements that resulted in social assistance policies, waves of prayer that triggered shelter initiatives, community decisions that redirected resources to protect children and the elderly. These effects do not arise by a sudden miracle, but by a chain of decisions that, combined, alter reality. The trumpet, then, functions as a trigger, a call that initiates a process of social transformation guided by spiritual principles and a practical commitment to goodness. When the community responds in this way, the impact becomes visible and lasting. At the same time, there is a real danger. Hasty readings can generate panic and hasty actions that, instead of promoting good, end up creating more confusion. Therefore, the recommendation is clear. Observe, compare, pray, and consult with trusted people. Seek to understand which decisions are necessary today and which can wait for maturity. The journey that begins with the central trumpet requires discipline, thoughtful decisions, practical steps, and a commitment to transformation that doesn't seek quick substitutes for profound changes. This is the difference between reacting impulsively and responding wisely, and it is wisdom that produces lasting results. Another aspect that makes the trumpet especially relevant is its role as a catalyst for subsequent revelations. In many narratives, the third trumpet acts as a turning point. As it sounds, it opens the way for other messages, for signs that previously went unnoticed. It's as if a beacon lights up on the horizon, and other beacons begin to flash in response. Observing this movement is an exercise in attention and humility. Attention to notice patterns, humility to accept that much remains hidden until the full picture is pieced together. Here, the hidden truth is gradually revealed through a series of revelations that are confirmed by the fruits and consistency of a life of practical faith. If you're attentive to this kind of sign, you may have noticed small synchronicities that demand greater consideration, a piece of news that resonates with a dream, an encounter that changes a decision, a collective sense of urgency that leads to concrete acts of love. Instead of giving into fear, transform this perception into responsible action. Reevaluate priorities. Strengthen your prayer life. Participate in initiatives that care for others. Ask yourself, where can I make a real difference right now? What decisions in my daily life need to be aligned with a mindset of care and service? These questions, more than hasty conclusions, are the kind of practical answers the trumpet awaits. Now I want to go even deeper into this subject. Comment, I'm on this journey too. Now I want to delve even deeper into this subject. What makes prayer and fasting reappear in almost every message and testimonial is something simple and, at the same time, profound. These practices act as tools for preparation and inner cleansing, stirring the spiritual sand that clogs the senses and impedes listening. Think of the soul as an instrument that, when covered in dust and routine, loses resonance. Prayer restores tuning. Fasting, in turn, is like a maintenance that removes from the center what competes for attention: the stomach, the impulse to consume, anxiety, and gives space to hear the hidden truth that wants to speak to the heart. It's not abstract mysticism. It's a methodology that generates transformation, alters mindsets, and conditions decisions so they arise from a place of greater integrity and less reactivity. When we talk about spiritual sanding, we're not inventing a problem. Many people live in a kind of emotional and mental sediment, fatigue, overstimulation, attachment to empty routines, that blocks perception. Intentional prayer acts like a thread of light that penetrates this layer, creating points of contact with the transcendent. Fasting, on the other hand, is a discipline that reminds us that not every need is a priority, that there's a difference between immediate desire and a life-giving decision. The combination of these two elements produces an impact: clarity of choices, greater sensitivity to signals, and a willingness to sacrifice small comforts for something lasting. But how can we transform this principle into daily practice without falling into extremism or empty formulas? The answer is practical and accessible. Start small, be consistent, and evaluate the results. For those just starting out, a simple mini-guide can be transformative. First, choose a period of intentional prayer, even 10 minutes a day, without cell phones. Focusing on silence and listening has power. Use this time for brief readings that guide the heart, a simple supplication, and then a few moments of silence. Second, adopt an initial fast that respects your health. For example, trying one light fasting day per week, replacing a meal with water, light soup, or juice, and dedicating part of that time to prayer and reflection may be enough to notice changes. If you have any health conditions, seek medical advice and adapt the practice. A carbohydrate redistribution fast, a 24-hour abstinence from social media, or a simple meal replaced by a period of silence can offer similar results. The effect of these practices is practical and measurable. Decisions made more slowly, relationships that become more peaceful, and the mental space to listen to intuitions that previously went unnoticed. Transformation happens in the details: choosing to forgive before justifying, choosing to listen instead of reacting, taking time to talk with those living under the same roof. Our mindset gradually shifts from reactive to deliberate, and this directly impacts how we face challenges and perceive larger signs. Revelations aren't just flashes of light. They often appear as subsequent clarity, as an understanding that emerges after weeks of practice and reflection. There is also an important community dimension. Prayer and fasting, when shared, amplify their effect. Small groups that commit to a weekly time of prayer, families that institute a day of fasting and reflection, communities that promote short retreats, all of this creates a social fabric that protects decisions and facilitates the emergence of fruits. Behind the scenes of these practices, in discreet conversations, in the exchange of experiences and mutual corrections, A favorable environment emerges for the trumpets, both intimate and collective, to be heard more clearly. The journey, therefore, is individual and communal at the same time. Each personal choice reverberates in the social fabric and can generate real impact. By presenting concrete practices, I don't want to sell a foolproof method, but rather offer a path tested by many who sought clarity. Start by establishing a mini habit of 10 minutes of daily prayer. Commit to a light day of fasting each week. Keep a simple notebook to record insights, dreams, and small coincidences that occur while you maintain these practices. Over time, compare the before and after. You will notice differences in your decisions, family conversations, how you handle conflicts, and your daily priorities. Hidden truth reveals itself little by little, and the constant work of prayer and fasting is the practical infrastructure that supports this revelation. Furthermore, it is essential to cultivate discernment. Practice without reflection can lead to confusion. Discipline without prudence can turn into pride. Therefore, combine devotion with study and the exchange of experiences. Read testimonies, listen to mature voices, share your doubts with someone you trust. The mindset of those who seek truth requires critical reading and a humble heart. This is the best defense against hasty interpretations and the temptation to turn every sign into a spectacle. The authentic journey encompasses silence, study, prayer, and coherent action, a triad that reorients the individual and strengthens the community. Another point to remember is that the intensity of the practice must always respect the body and the circumstances. Fasting is not a proof of spiritual merit. It is a tool for preparation. Those with health conditions that limit fasting can, for example, choose to fast from social media, reduce their consumption of entertainment, or dedicate a period of time to acts of service in place of fasting from food. The criterion is the same: create space to listen and transform decisions. Practical flexibility allows the discipline to be incorporated into life without causing harm or promoting empty legalisms. When prayer and fasting are incorporated into sustainable routines, something begins to change in the rhythm of things. There is less haste, more deliberation; less reactivity, more deliberation; less distraction, more focus. These effects compound and produce a profound impact on family choices, financial priorities, time management, and social engagement. In other words, spiritual practice transforms the terrain on which decisions are made, and in the long run, this yields tangible results: reconciliation, acts of solidarity, protection of children and the elderly, and greater ethical coherence in daily attitudes. Now I want to delve even deeper into this topic. I want to explore what concrete signs will indicate that your practices are bearing fruit, and how to transform these early signs into lasting habits that sustain a life of listening and service. Comment below: this resonates with me. Now I want to delve even deeper into this subject. As the fifth trumpet approaches, it places at the center that which most touches our hearts and holds us accountable: the protection of the family, and especially the care of children. It's not an abstract appeal, it's a practical call that touches concrete, everyday decisions, from dinner table conversations to choices about media, friendships, and financial priorities. The Virgin's language, in the messages that arrive in fragments, insists on this direction because it knows that the most fragile structure, yet at the same time, the most decisive for the transformation of society, passes through the home. The family is a laboratory of habits, mentalities, and values. When the home is protected, the impact reverberates for generations, and this is why the Hidden Trumpets insist so much on this point. Consider a family stuck in broken routines. Parents, always in a rush. Children connected to endless screens, superficial conversations, and a constant feeling of fatigue. A signal, perhaps a disturbing dream from one member, a sudden concern from a grandparent, or a circumstance that exposed a vulnerability, can act as a spark. The echoing message demands a decision. Reorganize priorities. Prioritize emotional and spiritual protection. Make simple commitments that reverse relational wear and tear. The transformation that emerges from these small adjustments isn't immediately spectacular, but it has cumulative effects. When a family deliberately decides to protect mealtimes, establish moments of silence, or set clear limits on entertainment, they are making decisions that shift the collective mindset of the household, thereby reducing risk and increasing resilience. There's a story that illustrates this point well. I met a couple who, after a series of minor crises that culminated in a serious fight involving one of their teenage sons, decided to establish a simple nightly ritual: 10 minutes of non-judgmental conversation, just listening. At first, it seemed like little. Over time, it became the lubricating oil for their stale relationships. The son regained trust. The wife felt more heard. The husband began to notice small decisions that contributed to harmony. This kind of story shows that protecting a family involves repeated choices, not dramatic one-off measures. The trumpet, in this sense, is an invitation to persistence and attention to the behind-the-scenes aspects of a relationship. It is there, in the details, that the emotional fate of the coming decades is decided. When we think about warning signs for parents, it's helpful to have a practical inventory, not to generate anxiety, but to guide decisions. Some signs are silent: a child who tends to avoid talking about school, a teenager who changes mood and becomes isolated, a partner who always seems tired and unwilling to talk. Others are more visible: repeated difficulties at school, friendships that worry, content consumed that promotes values contrary to well-being. Recognizing these signs isn't about blaming anyone. It's about reclaiming the responsibility to make decisions that protect. The hidden truth of the messages points to this point. Protecting the family often involves sacrifices and a reorganization of routines that favor loving presence and vigilance, not authoritarian control. The role of parents here is not to be emotional police, but to be guardians of an environment that fosters healthy growth. This involves concrete decisions: setting clear limits on device use, setting aside weekly moments for deep dialogue, reviewing the language and examples children receive at home, and above all, offering a routine of prayer or silence that creates space for inward reflection. These decisions directly impact the mindset that takes hold in the home. A family that values silence and dialogue creates a generation more apt to hear subtle cues. A family that prioritizes speed and consumption tends to lose sensitivity. Furthermore, it's important to protect the educational and social spaces where children spend time. The trumpet warns of the need to monitor not only what's happening inside the home, but also in the surrounding areas: schools, sports groups, friendship networks, and digital environments. A wise decision for parents is to invest time in understanding these behind-the-scenes details. Talking to teachers, participating in activities, understanding the content circulating among young people. These attitudes don't reveal distrust, they reveal care, and the impact is direct. When the family gets involved, warning messages lose their power, and opportunities for conversion and growth multiply. Protection also involves emotional education and a listening environment that allows the expression of doubts, fears, and mistakes without causing destruction. Children and adolescents need spaces where they can express their feelings, experiment with limits, and understand that mistakes are part of learning. A mindset that confuses protection with severe control can breed rebellion or silence. Wise protection creates environments where hidden truths can emerge, where confused dreams, received signals, and concerns can be shared and discerned. In this process, the family becomes a place of healing, not a terrain of contention. There are, of course, practical decisions that guide this care: reviewing sleep habits, prioritizing family meals, practicing a moment of gratitude or spiritual reading before bed, limiting screen time, encouraging outdoor activities and in-person gatherings. Each of these choices acts as a powerful safeguard against modern vulnerabilities, and the impact is evident in attitudes: less anxiety, more dialogue, greater capacity for ethical decision-making, and a mature ability to recognize external signs. In other words, practice converts theory into results. And this is precisely the logic that the messages of Medjugorje, in their fragmented revelations, often emphasize. It's also important to remember that protecting the family isn't a job that falls to just one member. It's a collective journey. a series of shared decisions that require dialogue and constant adjustment. When parents align themselves in small routines, the impact is amplified. When a member of the community reaches out to help, safety increases. Protection, therefore, is both intimate and social, and the trumpets evoke this dynamic. Caring for others is also caring for oneself, because the boundaries between individual and community overlap. Now I want to delve even deeper into this topic. I want to explore examples of practical signs that indicate when a family is truly protecting itself, and what kinds of daily decisions strengthen that protection in a lasting way. Write it down. I'm on this journey too. Now I want to delve even deeper into this subject. When we talk about signs in nature and the weather, we enter an area that is simultaneously fascinating and frightening. Clouds that seem to form images, eclipses that coincide with historical moments, animals that behave unusually, seasons that defy expectations. All of this raises the question that circulates in many people's minds. Is it coincidence or language? The question is not simple, and its beauty lies precisely in its ambiguity. Some see in these phenomena a sequence of natural causes explainable by science. Others perceive a web of meaning behind these coincidences, a hidden truth that reveals itself little by little behind the scenes of appearances, and that demands from us a mindset of listening and discernment before reaching any definitive conclusion. The first thing to understand is that observing patterns in weather and nature has always been part of the human experience. Ancient peoples read the sky to decide where to plant crops. Navigators followed the stars, and entire communities marked their journey through the seasons. When something deviates from the expected rhythm, an unseasonable rainfall, a sudden storm, a set of weather events synchronized with news that touches the community, it shakes our perception and rekindles an ancient curiosity. Is the world trying to communicate something? This question alone changes our attitude. It ceases to be mere speculation and becomes an invitation to responsible observation, to reevaluate decisions, and to open ourselves to transformations that often start small but accumulate impact. There are contemporary accounts that illustrate how these experiences can function as signs. People who have undergone conversion describe moments when a natural scene, a particularly striking sunset, birds unexpectedly gathering, an unusual silence before an event, served as a trigger for an internal change. In other narratives, natural events synchronized with human events provoked profound reflections and decisions of repentance or commitment to families and communities. These accounts, however subjective, paint a picture worthy of attention. Revelation doesn't need to be overwhelming to be decisive. It often happens in small occurrences that, viewed over time and in the light of prayer and study, acquire meaning. At the same time, it is essential to approach this topic with intellectual and emotional balance. The temptation to be alarmist is real. Interpreting any climatic or astronomical phenomenon as an apocalyptic sign distorts both science and spirituality. Likewise, cold rationalization that dismisses all meaningful experience impoverishes our ability to perceive the mystery that permeates life. A mature approach lies somewhere in between, recognizing that nature follows laws, but also realizing that human beings create meaning, and that when meanings converge, they can point to a calling that demands practical decisions. This approach combines curiosity with responsibility and is the fruit of a mindset that values transformation without succumbing to panic. In practice, learning to discern these signs requires some concrete actions. First, document. Noting patterns, dates, and contexts helps avoid impulsive interpretations. A journal recording significant coincidences, correlated dreams, and weather events can, over time, reveal a sequence that wouldn't be visible in the heat of the moment. Second, compare accounts. Seeking independent testimonies describing similar themes in different places is a measure of credibility. Third, seek guidance. Talking to people who are mature in their faith, leaders who study religious phenomena, and experts who understand natural causes prevents a symbolic interpretation from becoming a collective error. These are behind-the-scenes practices that strengthen the journey of those who wish to interpret without losing their minds. Another aspect to consider is the role of media and public narratives. In a hyper-connected world, a local natural event can become global news within hours, amplifying reactions and shaping interpretations. The speed of information can inflate emotional impact and provoke hasty decisions. Therefore, a prudent mindset suggests slowing down before judging and prioritizing the search for evidence and results. The revelations that are worthwhile are those that produce concrete changes in people's lives, greater compassion, more practices of solidarity, decisions that prioritize family protection and care for the vulnerable. If a sign in nature leads to such results, its credibility increases. If it only generates fear and confusion, there may be a distortion in the interpretation. It's also important to understand that there are distinct levels of meaning. The same phenomenon can have both a personal and a collective interpretation. For someone, the appearance of an unusual star may have served as intimate confirmation of a life decision. For the community, the same phenomenon may have been simply an astronomical event recorded by scientists. Both interpretations can coexist without canceling each other out, as long as they don't impose themselves as absolute truths without due consideration. Epistemological humility is crucial, accepting that human interpretations are limited and that the process of understanding hidden truth is gradual and collaborative. In the realm of practical decisions, recognizing signs in nature should therefore move us to concrete and balanced actions, reviewing personal priorities, strengthening family ties, investing in local charities, sensibly preparing for eventualities, and calmly studying the implications of each event. In other words, the wisest response to a possible sign is not spectacle, but quiet transformation, adjusting habits, reorienting mindsets, and making decisions that protect life and promote the common good. This is the criterion that separates harmless curiosity from revelation that demands a response. There is also an element of trust worth mentioning, trusting that the process of revelation is often longer than we expect. Hidden truth can take time to fully reveal itself. Therefore, revelations often come in stages requiring patience and perseverance on the journey. This patience is a transformative component. It shapes our ability to discern, distances us from haste, and brings us closer to informed decisions. It is in repeated choices, in small gestures of care, and in conscious sacrifices that real impact is achieved. Now I want to delve even deeper into this topic. I want to examine some concrete historical examples of natural phenomena that were interpreted as signs by communities, and how these interpretations influenced practical decisions and social transformations without sensationalism, just paying attention to the impact and gradual revelations. Comment below. This makes sense to me. Now I want to delve even deeper into this subject. To simply recap what we've seen so far, imagine the 7 trumpets as 7 progressive blasts in a single symphony. The first calls for inner conversion that changes priorities and decisions. The second sounds a warning about wavering faith, demanding the recovery of spiritual vigor in institutions and families. The third appears as a public signal, a central trumpet that aligns events and causes a collective impact. The fourth rekindles the urgency of prayer and fasting as tools for clearing spiritual sand. The fifth shifts the focus to protecting the family and caring for children. The sixth invites us to perceive signs in nature and in time, balancing science and mystery. And the seventh concludes with the promise of light for the faithful, transforming fear into practical action and hope. These 7 notes, taken together, form a narrative that demands not only intellectual understanding, but above all a change of mindset and habits, a journey of revelations that operates behind the scenes of life and that has a real impact when it finds hearts willing to respond responsibly. The synthesis of these signs leads us to a practical question. What can you start doing today to transform this understanding into concrete practice? The answer is simple, but it requires consistency. First, turn to daily prayer. It doesn't need to be a long ritual, but rather intentional. 10 minutes a day of silence and listening, with short readings that guide the heart, are enough to create a connecting thread between the hidden truth you seek and the decisions you make throughout the day. Prayer acts as a filter that reduces haste and increases clarity, helping you discern whether a sign is an opportunity for transformation or mere noise. Second, practice active discernment. Observe signs calmly, record synchronicities in a notebook, compare reliable accounts, and seek guidance from mature believers. This attitude avoids hasty readings, protects against sensationalism, and strengthens your own decision-making ability. Finally, care for your family as a strategic priority. Small choices such as setting aside time for distraction-free conversations, limiting exposure to harmful content, and establishing simple practices of gratitude or silence generate profound and lasting impact. These three actions, daily prayer, careful observation, and family protection, form a practical core that responds to the 7 trumpets without hysteria, with courage and wisdom. As you propose these steps, remember that transformation is a process. The time it takes to see results depends on the consistency and depth with which you live each choice. True transformation isn't a spectacle, it's a renewed routine, a change in mindset that gradually alters how we make decisions, how we love, and how we educate ourselves. Behind the scenes of this change, there are small but constant sacrifices: giving up excessive leisure time to cultivate family dialogue, choosing more conscious consumption to prioritize what nourishes the soul, dedicating regular minutes to study and reading that sustain a mature faith. These decisions, when repeated, have a recognizable cumulative effect: less anxiety, greater resilience, healthier relationships, and an increased ability to transform fears into concrete initiatives for good. It's legitimate to feel intimidated by the volume of information and signs sweeping across the world today. That's why it's important to reaffirm something that should guide our stance. You don't need to understand everything now. The important thing is to respond with faith and wisdom. This statement doesn't minimize the search for knowledge. On the contrary, it reduces haste and invites prudence. Faith without wisdom becomes disordered activism. Wisdom without faith can paralyze. A healthy synthesis combines both: confidence that there is light for those who seek it, and the discernment to act with caution. Spiritual leaders and scholars agree that the best response to profound signs is a practical life that bears fruit: reconciliation, consistent charity, protection of children, and decisions that prioritize the common good. These fruits are the most reliable indicator that this is a useful revelation and not a hasty interpretation. At the same time, maintain intellectual humility. Not every account is universal, and not every coincidence is mere talk. Part of the work of discernment consists of accepting limits, dialoguing with experts, and observing the fruits of truth over time. This approach avoids dangerous forks in the road between panic and denial, between fanaticism and coldness. The journey we propose here is collaborative. It involves family, community, and leadership, as well as personal decision-making. Hidden truth often requires testimonies, careful analysis, and time to be confirmed by the fruits. Patience, therefore, is part of the spiritual practice that sustains the changes suggested by the trumpets. Also, remember that transforming fear into action requires creativity and a practical mindset. Instead of giving in to despair, ask yourself what small decisions you can make today that will protect and generate life. Maybe it's reorganizing your budget to prioritize education and training. Maybe it's setting aside more quality time with your children. Or maybe it's joining a support or study group to deepen your faith. Transformation occurs in the sum of these actions, and that's when the promise of light begins to manifest visibly. The impact you seek doesn't have to be grand. It's often subtle, but it's lasting, and when multiplied, it redeems entire communities. Once this is done, it's important to cultivate follow-up, record progress, adjust as necessary, and maintain frank conversations with trusted individuals. The behind-the-scenes nature of change requires continuous work. Revelations are confirmed in daily practice. Authority here isn't inflexible authority, but rather the testimony of lives that have changed and communities that have found new rhythms. Empathy is the compass that guides community work, recognizing that each person has their own time and that the process of conversion and protection is gradual. With this combination of discernment, decision-making, and patience, the journey that begins with the trumpets can become a path of real, individual, and collective reform. Now, if anything here touched you in a special way, write in the comments. Which of the 7 messages impacted you the most, or what sign you've noticed in your own life? And take the opportunity to leave a like if this content brought clarity and added value to your journey. Comment. This resonates with me. If you've made it this far, thank you for walking with me through these words. It already says a lot about your heart and the seriousness with which you seek signs and transformation. If this content brought clarity or made you rethink important decisions, subscribe to the channel. Here I bring research, testimonies, and practical steps that truly help those who want to prepare and protect what matters most. If it resonates with you, leave one of these phrases in the comments to let me know you made it to the end. I'm with you until the end. Or, this message was for me. Seeing your stories helps me choose future topics and understand what else needs to be carefully explained. If this video touched you, please like it. This helps keep this work alive and allows others to find transformative content without pressure, just the desire to serve honestly. There's a video here that complements this topic. Click and continue with me there if you want to delve deeper. I've prepared testimonies and analyses that speak directly to the third trumpet and can help you discern more clearly. Thanks for your company. Come with me on this journey.